Welcome back, everyone. Interesting episode today. We're going to be talking some updates about the Brunson v. Alma case. That will be after the jump to Epic TV because YouTube does not like such things. Also, folks, Biden has signed a law to put kill switches in cars. And I know this sounds far out, but it's actually even beyond this. It includes even tracking systems in your car. All new vehicles are now going to be required to have this, although it may take several years for it, maybe a few years for it to roll out. I'll be talking about what that means, what these can actually do, and kind of what's happening with all this. Also, some updates on Congress, where things are at with the new votes happening right now with the House of Representatives. And also some new Twitter documents showing that Pfizer, one of the top executives there, it seems to be at least, that the accusation is this individual was censoring information on vaccine safety in order to make money. For those of you who have been following this for a while, well, you might know that it's probably not that surprising. But seeing the information as clear as day and knowing this is in fact what was happening, I think changes the whole narrative on this. This was a big money-making scam. They knew it was dangerous, and they were censoring people for spreading true information because it cost them money. It'll be an interesting episode today, folks. Stick around. Those of you on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, we will jump over exclusively to Epic TV after about 25 minutes. So again, join us on Epic TV. That's how let's get started. First, folks, let's talk about these kill switches in cars. Now, the Biden administration, this was something kind of stuffed down into another bill. The omnibus bills, as I think we come to call them, the ones that frankly, members of Congress don't even have time to read because they're so dang long and they submit them so late, oftentimes have a lot of different laws that I think would not normally get voted for had they been presented in a normal manner. This law on the kill switches in cars is, I think, one of those. Let me show you what's happening with this. Law enforcement today had the story and says this: infrastructure bill. And what's this doing in an infrastructure bill? The infrastructure bill included a drunk driving kill switch. And it's interesting they say drunk driving is kind of the surface name of the surface narrative for this, right? But in reality, this is actually something entirely different. I'll get into that in a minute. But it installs these drunk driving kill switches in all new cars. Let me show you. It says further snuck inside the recently passed $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. If you can keep track of which bill, if you can keep track of, we frozen? Of which bill is, of which bill is which, is a proposal to have a lockout device be installed in all new cars. Further, it states, according to an article written by former U.S. Representative Bob Barr, hidden away in the recently passed infrastructure bill is a measure to install vehicle kill switches into every new car, truck, and SUV sold in the country. It says the regulation likely won't be enforced for 5 years, so maybe there's time to do something about this. And it says, Barr points out that the bill, which has been signed into law by Biden, this is already signed, states that the kill switch, which is referred to as a safety device, must be, quote, passively monitored. Get this. Must passively monitor the performance of a driver of a motor vehicle to accurately identify whether the driver may be impaired. In other words, this isn't just a kill switch. This isn't just something that can make it so you can't use your car. It's a device that will be installed in all new cars that will monitor you as a driver and try to judge whether you're able to drive a car or not. Again, presumably this will prevent people from driving drunk and so on. But I'd argue, I wonder how many frequent drunk drivers actually buy brand new cars and not used cars. Typically, they're not the types who would be responsible in other areas of their lives, but that's a whole other point. But this is also something that will monitor you as a driver. And this actually goes beyond the narrative they're pushing for, this idea of drunk driving and so on, and ties to something entirely different. This is really about monitoring you as an individual. And it states this, in other words, Big Brother will constantly monitor how you drive. If you do something the system has been programmed to recognize and drive as driver impairment, your car could just shut off, which could be incredibly dangerous. It says further in, one problem identified by Bill Barr in addition to this is the fact that the proposed kill switch is an open system, or at least one with a back door, meaning authorized or unauthorized third parties can remotely access the system's data at any time. Now, there was a lot of concern years ago around the idea of hacking cars. And this was, again, for a long time I actually covered cybersecurity. This was actually something that was demonstrated in some cases. You can hack vehicles. You can control, for example, the acceleration and deceleration. You can control, for example, the brakes. And one of the concerns raised by the hacker community several years ago, I want to say it was around 2010, was that an individual could maliciously hack another person's vehicle while they're driving it, for example, and slam on the gas, so to speak, or disable the brakes, and use this as a way to assassinate somebody or do something else that's terrible. What this device does is basically installs kind of an easy access system for an attack like that. Aside from that, aside from the idea of just general national security threats, imagine, for example, that maybe members of Congress would be driving vehicles like this, that individuals who maybe the deep state does not like could be driving vehicles like this if all new cars have to have it. Aside from that point entirely, you're also getting to the idea of what would basically be viewed as a type of impairment by this device. And could that be, for example, speeding? Could that be, for example, driving when there's supposed to be a curfew in place? The applications of this go far beyond just the idea of drunk driving. It's regulation of driving, the regulation of anything you do on the road. And if the authorities that be could say, hey, this person's not supposed to drive to X location. This person is outside the perimeter of their curfew. This person is not supposed to be in this place or that place, and we're watching them everywhere they go. These types of technologies are what this would open the door to. And if you remember during the COVID lockdowns, for example, we saw reports like this. People, for example, arrested in other countries, some in the US, but in other countries, for example, who were traveling too far, who crossed state lines, who crossed national lines, who were, for example, leaving their homes when they were not supposed to. This device would allow the monitoring of individuals like that, the reporting of individuals like that, and even the forceful lockdown of individuals like that, maybe even to the point where they can't even use their vehicles, if this device is rolled out. I'll emphasize again, this device is now, this is it. This is signed into law by Biden. And there's a deeper agenda behind this as well. The World Economic Forum is actually pushing for some of this. And if you were to ask me, I'd say this, while we can talk about the kill switches in one regard, right? I raised some of the concerns with them. Again, this is law. This is already done. This is already in place. It's going to take a few years for them to roll it out, but it's already there. They've already done that. Those kill switches are going to be where it's heading. But there's a deeper agenda, not just against drunk driving, not just against impaired driving, not just against people maybe leaving their house during curfew or maybe lockdowns. There's an agenda against cars overall. And the World Economic Forum, as you might not be surprised, is one of the main organizations pushing for this. Let me show you Fox News on this. It says, World Economic Forum calls to reduce private vehicles by eliminating ownership. No more ownership. They want to have shared vehicles. You don't own a vehicle, you share a vehicle. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. That's the idea, right? It says the World Economic Forum is looking to reduce global reliance on critical metals as nations look to make the transition to renewable energy supplies. One proposal is reducing ownership of private vehicles. And the World Economic Forum actually states, quote, this transition from fossil fuels to renewables will need large supplies of critical metals such as cobalt, lithium, nickel, to name a few. Name a few. The forum said in a report earlier this month. Shortages of these critical minerals could raise the cost of clean energy technologies. So, what do? There's not enough cobalt, nickel, lithium, so on. There's not enough of these rare minerals that you need to manufacture this new future they're trying to build. Well, what are those things being used for? Part of it is cars. So what do? Well, you make it so people don't actually own their cars. That's the solution. It says the international lobbying organization, the World Economic Forum, again based in Switzerland, has proposed 3 solutions for lowering the costs of critical metals used in everything from cell phones and electronic vehicles to wind turbines and efficient lighting. Quote, more sharing of vehicles can reduce ownership of idle equipment and thus material usage. The group argued, pointing to statistics that show the average vehicle in England is just driven 4% of the time. Vehicle sharing initiatives like Get Around and Blue SG have become increasingly popular around the world and are key in reducing the number of cars and electronics needed globally, the forum argued. There you have it, folks. So maybe if you're driving your car not enough, you're just not sharing it enough, and maybe they could hit that little kill switch in your car to make sure that you know the importance of sharing your vehicle. Now, if you remember, this isn't just the World Economic Forum. This isn't just Davos. This isn't just some crazy, European guy in his hollowed out volcano or something like that. It's not just that. This is also something that was proposed right here in the United States. This was also something our own elected officials wanted. If you remember, it wasn't just about getting rid of private ownership of vehicles. They wanted to get rid of vehicles overall. Those of you who remember, that was included in the Green New Deal, AOC, right? Ocasio-Cortez. In the Green New Deal, Cortez wanted to get rid of airplanes. She wanted to get rid of boats. She wanted to get rid of farting cows. I'm not even joking, because methane and so on. And people laughed at her. People thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was ridiculous. If you remember when the Green New Deal was announced, I don't think anybody took it seriously. It was like, what are these crazy socialists up to? And people were picking it apart and saying, hey, this is never going to be possible. One of the former heads of Greenpeace came out and said, if you roll this out and you want to, again, it talks about destroying all existing infrastructure, basically like homes, and then rebuilding everything, basically tearing down all the current infrastructure. He was saying that if you do that, you're going to have mass death. You're going to cause a genocide. And what was the response? Well, Wikipedia took him off, actually removed him. Wikipedia disappeared one of the former heads of Greenpeace for pointing out the problems of the Green New Deal. In fact, removed the mention of him as even one of the founders of Greenpeace. And by no means a right-wing organization, of course. They're pretty radical, very radical, environmentalist group. But Forbes said this in 2019 on the point of vehicles. It says, Green New Deal's plan for planes, trains, and automobiles won't work. It says Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey recently announced a Green New Deal resolution. And it calls for a host of policies, including free education, guaranteed jobs. Costa Rica has that, and it's one of the reasons why the bureaucracy is so bad. Briefly, then I'll go deeper into this. The idea of guaranteed jobs, you know what that looks like? It means you go to your local, government agency to do anything, and they have the professional stapler operator. And if the professional stapler operator isn't present at the time you need to file your documents, you have to come back next Tuesday to go have your papers stapled by the professional stapler. It's where they have guaranteed jobs, and so they take the most ridiculous, minute tasks and individually assign them to people. That's what guaranteed jobs looks like in countries that practice it. But aside from the point, free education, guaranteed jobs, and a nationwide mandate for 100% renewable energy, a mandate. all within a 10-year plan. All of this may sound great, according to Forbes, but like many grand solutions, it lacks specific details and ignores economic reality, especially when it comes to transportation policy. The earliest version of the resolution provides more details than the final version and gives us a better sense of what Representative Ocasio-Cortez really wants. For example, one point regarding infrastructure reads, quote, this is what Cortez wanted: totally overhaul transportation by massively expanding electric vehicle manufacturing, building charging stations everywhere, build out high-speed rail at a scale where air travel stops becoming necessary, create affordable public transit available to all, with goal to replace every combustion engine vehicle. They want to get rid of combustion engine vehicles, gas vehicles. And by the way, they're actually rolling that out right now in Canada to some extent. They're starting to ban even combustion engine vehicles, or trying to at least. Forbes noted it's far-fetched to think this could be accomplished within 10 years, especially under government management. And the points contradict themselves. Why do we need electric vehicles and charging stations everywhere if almost everyone has access to affordable public transit and high-speed rail? Well, you tell me, right? Wild stuff, folks. Again, this ties to a deeper agenda they're trying to roll out right now. I'd say one of the big ironic points is even with the energy shortages, even the charging stations and the electric vehicles are being shown to not be sustainable. In fact, during the recent blizzards in New York and Buffalo, for example, they had electric snowplows that couldn't operate because they didn't have the power that they needed to be able to do their job. Those vehicles were useless. The electric vehicle rollout proved to not be sustainable. In California, for example, they were telling people to not charge their vehicles. In Europe, for example, where they're currently having a lot of these problems, they're also telling people don't charge your electric car. All you can use are combustion engines. So the question is, what are they really doing? Well, I'd say this ties into the 15-minute city agenda, which we talked about recently. Maybe we'll get into more in the future. The idea ties into this World Economic Forum vision of the 15-minute city, everything within a 15-minute ride, with all the infrastructure you need to stay within your little pod, right? Now, that being said, it does appear they're well on their way to eliminating private car ownership. Remember what they're doing right now. What they're doing right now is not necessarily banning vehicles. What they're doing right now is making vehicles unattainable. They're making it so that you cannot afford to have a vehicle, that private ownership becomes very difficult to get, that it's not feasible to be the only person who owns a car, and they want you to share your vehicle. That is the agenda as it currently stands. And let me show you where that's heading right now. Wall Street Silver had an interesting graph on Twitter. It says the average new vehicle asking price rose to a record $46,823 in November. And I doubt everybody just has that money laying around. There you go, is the rising costs of vehicles. Part of that, of course, caused by the shipping crisis and other things. But folks, it's going to keep getting more expensive. This is not a trend that's going to turn around anytime soon. And with that, I'd say a lot of people already, vehicles, at least newer vehicles, are going to be quickly out of reach. And if they begin restricting the ownership of older vehicles, which is some policies are trying to float right now, well, those are going to be the only option. All right, folks, that said, the rest of the show is a bit too spicy for YouTube. I want to get into vaccine safety. YouTube actually gave me a retroactive strike for this recently, so we can't talk about it on YouTube. I also want to get into Brunson v. Alma, and you can't talk about election stuff on on YouTube. So we will jump over exclusively to Epic TV now. The unfortunate reality of YouTube, they'll give you strikes for this stuff. I'm already one strike. They've given me multiple strikes, but they kind of roll back, and so I'm already one strike in. I get two more, they delete the channel. So let's jump over exclusively to Epic TV and talk about what's happening with vaccine safety, how Pfizer, it's now being exposed, top executive was deleting or making Twitter delete accurate information warning people about dangers with the vaccine. They were suppressing accurate information because they were worried it was going to cost them money. This was about money, and I'd say it still is about money. And also, again, we'll get into Brunson v. Alma, updates on that. So come join us on Epic TV. Again, we have an hour left on the show. I will see you there, folks. But first, let me show you a quick trailer. We recently spoke with Google whistleblower Zach Vorhe about something very interesting. Everybody's talking about these new, AI chat systems, and people are noticing that they seem to be kind of censoring themselves. They seem to be giving very politically correct answers in just about everything. One of the reasons this is that these systems are only pulling from specific information. These, new AI systems are not real AI. They are being selectively programmed by individuals who are limiting the sources they can pull from. By doing that, these AI are not truly artificially intelligent. These AI are basically like, brainwashed bots that can repeat only specific narratives. Now, this is concerning when it gets to the foundations of the internet. Most technologies that you see running as just algorithms, for example, how Twitter weighs or presents information, how Google shows you results for search, not just on Google itself, but even on the search functions of individual websites. The bones of the internet are being altered. The nature of information is being altered. And if you look at the future where, Musk wants to put chips in people's brains, imagine if, his vision is you can basically think about something and then the answers will be given to you immediately. Imagine if you think about something and the answers that are given to you are only these politically correct social justice answers that are not reflective of reality. This ties to what's happening with artificial intelligence. And let's expose that. I'm going to show you a trailer of what we talked about.
It's official that Twitter and Facebook both had backdoor access to the FBI. They've got backdoor access so that the FBI can log in and say, this person is spreading misinformation and needs to be banned. It's pretty obvious that this isn't just a problem with Twitter. This just isn't a problem with Facebook. This is a problem with YouTube. This is a problem with Google. It's happening. I worked at YouTube from 2016 to 2019 when pretty much everything went crazy with Donald Trump's election and the censorship and the defining of fake news. And what I found instead was the real censorship engine, which was called machine learning fairness. Machine learning fairness is Google's AI that censors its main products: Google Search, Google News, YouTube. And it pretty much classifies all data found on the platform, and then they can know which signals to amplify and which signals to suppress.
Wild stuff, folks. By the way, those of you curious, I use Brave Search and Brave Browser. Even DuckDuckGo, as an alternative to Google, has basically gone the way of woke. So it's crazy stuff, right? All right, folks, that says jump over to Epic TV exclusively. Then I'm going to get into what's happening with Pfizer and Brunson v. Alma. I will see you on Epic TV. Folks, thank you for being here. Those of you curious about